I never liked my half-brother, Ryan. Not in a dramatic, I hate you, kind of way, just an unspoken, natural distance. We shared the same mother but different fathers, and our lives had always been separate. He was the reckless type, always bouncing from job to job, while I built a steady life, a house, a career, a family. Still, when Emily, my wife, started inviting him over more often, I didn't think much of it. She said she felt bad for him, that he was going through a rough time. And sure, I believed it, why wouldn't I? I worked long hours, and when I came home, Ryan was there. Not always, but enough. Sitting at the kitchen table. Laughing with Emily. Playing with my kids, Noah and Lily, as if he belonged there. But I took it as normal. Family is family, right? Then little things started to shift. Emily was on her phone more. Texts that she dismissed with a fake laugh. Showers right before bed, when she'd always taken them in the morning. Her perfume, stronger than usual, even when she was just staying home. And then there was the one night. I came home late, later than usual. The house was quiet, the kids asleep. I walked into our bedroom and saw 2 glasses of wine on the nightstand. Only one was half full. Emily was already under the covers, pretending to be asleep, but I could tell. She was awake. And she smelled exactly like Ryan's cologne. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the sound of my own breathing. My hands curled into fists. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because if I was right, if my wife, the mother of my children, was cheating on me with my own brother, I needed proof. And when I got it, revenge wouldn't just be personal. It would be legendary. Lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he felt something inside him snap. The scent of another man still clung to the sheets, mixing with his wife's perfume, creating a stench that made his stomach turn. There was no denying it anymore. Something was happening. But anger wouldn't control him. Not yet. If he confronted Emily without proof, she would lie, just as she already had. She would twist the truth, gaslight him, make him feel like a fool. Worse, she would cover her tracks. No, she had to be caught. Exposed. There had to be no way out, no explanations, no excuses. Only the cold, undeniable truth. Step 1: Understanding the enemy. Emily had always been calculated, but never as subtle as she believed. She thrived on control, on keeping her grip tight over every situation. That meant she wouldn't admit to anything unless forced. She had to be trapped. Ryan, on the other hand, was reckless. Arrogance had always been his flaw, and it made him predictable. He was the weak link in this affair, the one who would eventually slip up. And when he did, it would all come crashing down. Step 2: Gathering intel. Everything had to be planned. A direct confrontation would solve nothing, if anything, it would only give Emily time to cover her tracks. So he started watching. Paying attention. The times she showered. The moments she seemed too eager for him to leave for work. The way Ryan's name slipped into conversations in ways that suddenly felt too familiar. Then, the final piece fell into place. Emily had left her phone unattended. Normally cautious, she had slipped, distracted by something upstairs. The moment was brief, but enough. No passcode blocked access, and what lay inside confirmed what he had feared. The messages were undeniable. Conversations filled with longing, with reckless promises. Plans for another night together. The kind of words that left no room for doubt. It was real. It was happening. And it had been happening for a long time. His grip tightened around the phone. His breathing slowed. There was no emotion now, only focus. The next step was clear. Step 3: Setting the trap. If they were meeting tomorrow night, it meant he had a perfect opportunity. There would be no more second guessing. No more suspicions. This time, he would see it for himself. Recording them seemed like the best option. A hidden camera, an audio device, something tangible that could be used later, something no lawyer could twist into a misunderstanding. It had to be undeniable. At nearly 2 in the morning, he grabbed his keys and left the house. Step 4, securing the evidence. There was only one person he trusted for this, Mark, an old friend from the military, a man who had seen the worst in people and never sugar-coated reality. Arriving unannounced, he barely offered an explanation before requesting the necessary tools. There were no questions, no hesitations. Mark simply handed over a hidden camera, a voice recorder, and a look that said he understood far more than was being said. The plan was set. Step 5, the perfect alibi. The next morning, everything had to seem normal. No hesitation. No suspicion. Emily needed to believe she was still in control. A simple goodbye, a casual departure, just another day of work. The act had to be convincing, which meant creating a believable alibi. Instead of heading to his job, he checked into a hotel across town. He even made a call home, ensuring Emily heard the background noise of a typical shift. Then, he waited. As night fell, he parked a block away from the house. The darkness concealed him, giving him the advantage. At 10:42 p.m., Ryan's car pulled into the driveway. Right on schedule. He remained still, watching as the lights inside flickered, imagining what was unfolding behind those walls. His hands remained steady. His breathing stayed controlled. Years of training in high-pressure situations had prepared him for this. When the clock hit 11:30 p.m., it was time. The approach was slow, methodical. Each step brought him closer, but there was no hesitation. His fingers brushed against the hidden camera embedded in his shirt, ensuring it was recording. This was it. The moment everything would change. The front door wasn't locked. A detail that might have seemed insignificant on any other night, but tonight, it confirmed what he already knew. They were too comfortable, too convinced they were untouchable. Stepping inside, he moved with the practiced silence of a man who had spent years training his body to operate in darkness. He could hear them, low murmurs, hushed laughter. Then the unmistakable sound of movement upstairs. The bedroom door was ajar. His fingers brushed against the hidden camera secured beneath his shirt. The red light blinked once, recording. Proof. Pushing the door open, the scene inside burned itself into his memory. Emily, barely covered by a sheet, eyes widening in shock as she registered his presence. And Ryan, shirtless, frozen mid-motion, looking like a trapped animal. The air in the room was thick, the scent of sweat and perfume suffocating. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Emily spoke first, her voice sharp, defensive, but not apologetic. There was no shame in her expression, only resentment at being caught. Ryan scrambled, reaching for his clothes, the bravado he had carried into this affair shattering in an instant. He looked like he wanted to explain, to excuse himself, but no words came. He knew there was no point. The rage was there, coiled beneath the surface, but it wasn't wild. It was calculated. A different kind of anger, colder, heavier. It was the kind that didn't lash out blindly, it struck where it mattered most. Emily's voice turned vicious, shifting blame before he had even spoken a word. She acted as though she was the victim here, twisting the situation, trying to find a way to make him the villain. She accused him of neglect, of absence, of being responsible for driving her into Ryan's arms. Her words were cruel, meant to cut deep, to shift guilt onto him. But he didn't take the bait. He didn't argue. Didn't yell. He simply watched her, let her unravel in front of him. Let her dig her own grave. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and played the recording of their messages. Every word, every betrayal, every whispered promise between them. Emily's face drained of color. The confidence she had clung to wavered, replaced by something dangerously close to fear. But she recovered quickly, snapping into anger, launching threats. She warned him that if he tried to use any of this against her, she would take everything, his house, his money, his children. She claimed the courts would believe her over him. She would destroy his reputation, make him look like the monster. If he pushed her, she would make him regret it. Ryan, still standing there shirtless, didn't wait to see how things played out. He grabbed his clothes and bolted. No goodbye, no attempt to defend Emily. Whatever loyalty they had meant nothing now that the walls were closing in. Coward. Emily didn't seem to care that Ryan was gone. She squared her shoulders, defiant, as if she still believed she held the upper hand. But she didn't. Because the game was no longer about proving her wrong. It was about winning. And this was only the beginning. The courtroom felt colder than it should have. Every word spoken inside it carried weight, each argument meant to shape my future. Emily sat across from me, perfectly composed, her expression carefully crafted into one of quiet suffering. She had mastered this role, the wronged woman, the abandoned wife forced into infidelity by a husband who had supposedly left her with no other choice. She claimed she had felt invisible, neglected. That my long hours at work, my focus on providing for our family, had made her lonely. According to her, she hadn't cheated out of desire or betrayal, but out of necessity. I had left her emotionally stranded, she insisted, and Ryan had simply been there to pick up the pieces. The words were spoken with just enough sadness, just enough remorse, that to an outsider, they might seem almost reasonable. Almost. But not to me. I had spent years building a life for us. Every extra shift, every sacrifice, it had all been for her, for our children, for a future that she had burned to the ground. And now, she had the audacity to paint herself as the victim, expecting sympathy. I kept my face calm, unreadable, even as anger burned in my chest. She was playing her part well, but I had come prepared. My lawyer systematically dismantled her performance, exposing the lies one by one. The evidence was undeniable. The text messages, the recordings, the financial statements showing money funneled out of our accounts to support Ryan, her lover, her excuse. Her face remained impassive as these details were laid out for the court, but I could see the cracks forming beneath her mask. The judge listened carefully, his expression giving nothing away. But I could feel it shifting. The power she thought she had over this situation was slipping. I should have felt victorious, but the battle wasn't over yet. As the session ended and I walked out of the courthouse, I could feel Emily's eyes on me. She wasn't done. There was more fight left in her. And if I knew her at all, she wasn't above playing dirty. The parking lot was nearly empty by the time I left. The trial had drained me, but I refused to show it. The weight of everything sat heavy in my chest, the betrayal, the custody battle, the knowledge that no matter what happened, my children would be caught in the middle. The car was parked exactly where I had left it. I unlocked the door, about to step inside, when something made me pause. A sound. A shift in the air. Then I saw the headlights. The roar of an engine ripped through the quiet evening, and before I could react, a car was barreling straight toward me. Instinct kicked in. I turned sharply, pushing myself away from the impact, but the force still caught me on the side. The world tilted as my body hit the pavement, pain exploding through my ribs and shoulder. Tires screeched as the car sped away, leaving nothing but the smell of burnt rubber and the distant echo of a revving engine. Lying on the asphalt, I gasped for breath, pain lancing through my side. My vision blurred, my head ringing. But I knew. I knew who had been behind that wheel. Ryan. The coward who had run from the courtroom, from the truth, had decided that if he couldn't face me, he'd eliminate me. I forced myself to move, to test my limbs. Nothing was broken, but my ribs ached, my skin burned where the pavement had torn into it. I could hear people shouting in the distance, running toward me. The sharp wail of an approaching ambulance cut through the air. Lying there, staring at the darkening sky, I felt something shift inside me. This had never just been about cheating. It was about destruction. Ryan and Emily weren't satisfied with ruining my marriage. Now, they wanted to ruin me completely. But they had failed. I was still here. And I was going to finish this war. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of the machines monitoring my vitals. The pain in my ribs was a constant reminder of what had happened, a dull ache that refused to fade. My leg, wrapped tightly in bandages and immobilized, throbbed with a deeper kind of agony, one that whispered a bitter truth I wasn't ready to face. The doctors had given me the prognosis. The damage was severe. The bones would heal, but not perfectly. Mobility would be limited. The limp would be permanent. Lame, for life. Ryan had taken that from me. But he hadn't taken my ability to fight back. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, I forced my mind to focus. Survival wasn't enough. There had to be consequences. He had tried to kill me. He had to pay for it. The police had questions, of course. The hit and run was under investigation, but I knew how easily cases like this could fade into nothing. If I wanted justice, I needed undeniable proof, just like I had needed it for Emily's betrayal. I didn't have to look far. Ryan had been careless. Arrogant. He thought that speeding off into the night would erase his crime, but people saw things. Security cameras, witnesses, his reckless desperation had left a trail. It was my lawyer who found the first major piece of evidence. Surveillance footage from a nearby building caught Ryan's car speeding away from the courthouse parking lot at the exact moment of the attack. The front bumper showed clear signs of impact. Scratches, dents, proof that he had hit something. Or someone. Then came the second piece. A mechanic, one Ryan had gone to for a rushed repair job, reported suspicious damage. The car had been brought in hours after the hit and run. The mechanic, having seen the news about my accident, made the connection and reported it. With the footage and the repair records, the case against Ryan was undeniable. It didn't matter what excuses he tried to make, the evidence buried him. Sitting in the courtroom again, I felt a strange sense of déjà vu. The same cold walls, the same tense air, but the stakes were different now. This wasn't just about infidelity. This was about attempted murder. Ryan sat at the defendant's table, his usual arrogance stripped away. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders hunched, his confidence shattered. He wasn't the smug man who had laughed with my wife in my own home. He wasn't the coward who had run half-naked from my bedroom. He was a man who had finally lost. Emily sat behind him, her mask of composure cracked beyond repair. She had her own battle to fight, and she knew it. She was about to lose everything. The prosecution laid out the case piece by piece, every bit of evidence stacking against Ryan like bricks in a prison wall. The footage. The mechanic's statement. The lack of an alibi. He had tried to silence me, to erase the one person who had exposed his betrayal. But he had failed. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty. Sentencing was immediate. Ryan wouldn't just be going to prison, he would be rotting there for a long time. But the battle wasn't over yet. Emily still had to face her reckoning. She fought, of course. She wasn't the type to go down without dragging everyone with her. She painted herself as a victim, tried to distance herself from Ryan, as if she hadn't chosen him over her own family. But the evidence against her was just as damning. Her financial records were displayed for the court, every dollar she had funneled into Ryan's lifestyle exposed. The proof of her neglect as a mother, the way she had let our son drift into danger while she focused on her affair, was impossible to ignore. Then came the final blow. The court reviewed her threats against me. The recording of her voice, cold and venomous, promising to take everything from me, to destroy my life if I dared to stand against her. It was over. The judge ruled in my favor. Emily lost all parental rights. She wouldn't see our children again, not unless they chose to find her when they were older. She wouldn't get the house, or the money, or the life she had tried to secure by betraying me. She was left with nothing. I watched as the realization settled in her eyes. There was no anger now. No more threats. Only defeat. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt the weight of everything settle over me. The fight was over. I had won. But victory didn't come without scars. The limp was a reminder of what Ryan had done. What Emily had cost me. A permanent mark of how far they were willing to go to destroy me. But I was still here. Stronger. Wiser. My kids stood beside me, the only thing that truly mattered. They were safe. Free from his mother's influence, free from the chaos that had nearly consumed him. As we drove home, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the violence. I had lost a part of myself, but I had kept my soul intact. I had fought back. I had won. Justice had been served. But was it enough? Was this revenge? Or should I have done more?